Good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to see you all here. I would like to welcome our guests. Today we are here to discuss a very, very important issue, which is about road safety in Georgia and in general too. We have guests from the UK, we have guests from Russia, USA, and we are very much happy to see those distinguished guests here today. And I'm sure you are all here today to see how it happens in the world and why it is important in Georgia. But you should be silent, right? Do you all hear me back? Yeah? Okay, please keep quiet, okay? If you'd like to hear something good from our guests. Thank you. Alright, let me introduce our guests to you. Maybe Kate McMahon. Yeah. Okay, she's going to talk about her professional experience of working at Ministry of Transport of Great Britain. She had been working there for many years, and I'm sure her contribution will be very, very important for us. Okay, the second, Emma McLennan. Okay. Talk about the EASST organization. It is difficult to remember what does it mean, but she will explain what it means. It's, I think, Eastern Alliance. Yeah, after presentation, yeah. All right. Then we have another guest, Gera Kwaslava. He is now actively working with us, and now in our university, you may remember last year we established a club, a road safety club, and now we are planning to do very active programs here in our university and in Georgia too. And then Dimitri Savbuk, who will also talk about a number of projects related to education. Now I would like to ask Dimitri to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? So yes, my name is Dimitri, and I'm here more to moderate the discussion. The discussion. So it's supposed to be questions from you or comments as well. We're not here to lecture you all the time, and the topic we are discussing today is very interactive. It's supposed to be interactive. It's all about you, your safety, our safety. What is road safety? Why it's important for you? As I said, I'm working with Emma McLennan for an international organization called EAST. We are a road safety organization. My background, just very quickly, I'm from Russia. I spent most of the time in Russia, and I working in the field of international relations and development. Then I moved to London, to the UK, so I have a very mixed experience in terms of road safety, extremes. So I will reintroduce our guests, and then each of them will do 10-15 minute presentation, and then we'll follow with your questions or comments if you have. So the first to speak will be Kate, and Kate will give you a brief overview about road safety and about UK experience in that field. So please.
Can't hear back here.
when it works. We're short of time, so I just want to really do a very brief introduction to why road safety matters. We call it a global epidemic. We talk about epidemics in terms of disease. Road safety is as important as major diseases like malaria. It kills 1.3 million people globally every year. Now, if that was a disease, everyone would be rushing around trying to find cures. We know the cures for road safety. There's a huge amount of work already done. The trick is to get every country and every government interested in using what is known to solve the problem of road safety. We know that without action, there are going to be 1.9 million people killed by 2020. But we can do more, and that is why the Decade of Action for Road Safety was set up in 2011 in order to save millions of lives. This graph, I'm sorry the resolution isn't particularly good, but it shows where we will be if we don't do anything, which is the top of that yellow triangle, and where we aim to be by 2020 if every country in the world starts to address the problem. So what have we been doing recently in 2015? It has been a very important year. The new sustainable goals have been set, and road safety for the first time has a specific goal. And that was adopted at a meeting in September. And there is going to be a big interministerial conference in Brasilia in November. The main goal is the first one, which is to halve the number of global deaths and injuries from road traffic accidents by 2020. Now this is an extremely ambitious target. We're already in 2015, and many countries have not even started that work. I think realistically, perhaps 2025 or 2030 will be perhaps where we will be able to achieve that. But it is good to start with something very ambitious, because it makes people really realise the gravity of the problem. The second goal is more general, and that is merely to talk about how road safety, we aim to make everybody have safe transport. And so it is not a specific goal in terms of numbers, but still very important. What I'd like to turn to now, away from the sort of global arena, is to say, who is most at risk on the roads? We know that half of the deaths are the most vulnerable people: pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. We also know that it is young people, the 15 to 29-year-olds, people who are in this room, who are most at risk. Their exposure is high, they're out and about a lot, they're taking risks, they're out late at night, they are drinking, they are driving when they are inexperienced, and even as pedestrians, they are still at risk. We know that every day 1,000 young people die on the roads, and that is a terrible toll, it is a terrible cost to society. The young, productive future of countries is being killed in road accidents. We know also that middle-income countries like Georgia have 80% of the road deaths, but they have only 52% of registered vehicles. So the risk is actually very, very high compared to the higher-income countries. This graph shows road deaths by road user type and income. And as incomes rise, the proportion of vehicle users rises also. It's in the lower income countries where pedestrians in particular are very much at risk. And as countries motorize, pedestrians are exposed to increasing risk. They are less used to traffic, they are unaware of how to deal with the risks of the roads, and the infrastructure usually is designed for car use rather than for pedestrians. And this graph shows the proportion of road deaths by age group as well as income. And in the less well-off countries, again, young people are predominantly the ones at risk. If you look at that green bar, you can see that in high-income countries, older people are more at risk. That is partly, of course, because they live longer in high-income countries, but also they remain driving into older age. Moving on now to the way that we look at road safety these days, which is in terms of a system. Very much in the past, people used to focus on road safety in little boxes. What are people doing? What are the cars doing? What are the roads doing? Rather than thinking of the linkages between them. And so we use now what we call a systems approach. And we think together, roads, road users, trauma care, which is very important for when accidents occur, because many people die unnecessarily because they don't get enough good care, and also vehicles. Haddon was the first person to start to think about a road system. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it is showing that you can think about road safety in terms of what happens before the crash, what happens at the crash, and what happens afterwards. And all those elements are linked together. Ideally, you want to avoid the crash, but also the crash has occurred. You want to have things that mitigate injury in terms of a well-designed car, good trauma care, etc. And of course, one of the most important things is having a driver who is well-trained, well-motivated, and obeys the rules. So this is a slightly more complicated idea about kinetic energy in the safe system. A moving object has kinetic energy and it increases exponentially with the square of the speed. I'm sure any of you who are engineers will be very familiar with this. So if you travel twice as fast, you have 4 times as much kinetic energy. The safe system manages loss of control of kinetic energy within the tolerances which are survivable by the human body. Therefore, rather than blaming the victim for causing crashes, the risk of human error is anticipated and tolerated by a forgiving system. Roads should be designed so that if somebody makes a mistake, they don't go off the edge into a chasm, they don't hit a tree, for instance. Within an area where there are pedestrians, speeds should be designed so that people are driving slowly enough that if a pedestrian does step out, particularly a child, they have a chance of survival. So that all the responsibility is not put directly on the driver. Obviously they must obey the rules, but they ought to be helped by the design of the road and the design of the vehicle. So the idea now is sustainable safety and towards zero. That means towards zero deaths and serious injuries on the roads. And this is something that many countries are now signing up to. It perhaps sounds a little unrealistic, but if we think of all that we know in terms of the way that vehicles can be designed, roads can be designed, people can be trained, it is an attainable goal in the longer term. There will always be crashes, we know that, in a system where cars are mixing. But if we can control the speed of those vehicles, the design of the vehicles, we can make sure that people are not killed or seriously injured as a result of those crashes. And that would be an enormous advance. And it's not just the design of the roads and the vehicles, it's also in terms of broader community goals. If you are locating a new school, will the children be able to get there safely? You need planning controls, planning design to make sure that there is safe accessibility for those children. So it goes beyond just saying we look at the roads and the vehicles. We also look at planning law, we look at the way that decisions are made, whether local authorities should be making areas pedestrian friendly or even completely pedestrianised. So all those things of planning also come into it. Now the key behavioural factors, and I'm going to focus entirely on those for the rest of this presentation. There is not time to cover everything in road safety. So we know that the key things are speed, impairment from alcohol and drugs, lack of use of seat belts, not wearing helmets on motorbikes, misuse of infrastructure, not understanding how to, for instance, use a roundabout, inadequate training and testing of new drivers, and the lack of awareness of risk, and this is very much a focus for young people, and driver denial of rights to vulnerable road users. Many people think that pedestrians should get out of their way, rather than thinking that the driver has a duty to keep pedestrians safe. The UN has produced some good practice manuals focusing on those key risks, and they are, I recommend them to you very strongly. They are full of an enormous amount of information set out very clearly about how those road risks are dealt with. And then there are many successful programs going on. I'm not going to go through that whole list because we're getting short of time, but certainly looking at risk awareness, raising education and publicity, enforcement. The drink drive social pressure is very important. Drink driving should be made socially unacceptable. Enforcement of seatbelts and of course driving and testing, making sure that testing is corruption-free is a very important element. And moving on to the young people. Why are they at high risk? We know they are. A lot of independent travel, use of two-wheel transport in many places. Drivers are inexperienced, therefore that impinges on their passengers. There's risk-taking behaviour, peer influence, pressure to speed is very often the case. Driver wants to show off to his girlfriend. He doesn't think about her safety. He thinks about simply impressing her with speed, not realising she's probably not impressed at all. Alcohol and drug use, very often young, are at risk there. And mobile phones and distraction are a huge problem. And we've had campaigns in the UK specifically addressing young people on that. This was one of the campaigns aimed at teenage pedestrians, because we knew that there was a big problem with them texting whilst walking, stepping out into the road without thinking, playing with their phones, playing games on their phones while walking. And so these posters were aimed, and the publicity that attached to them was aimed to show them the risk and to make them think about how they use their phones while walking. Another program we've used in the UK, which is school-based. When I was first in road safety, we were doing quite sort of limited road safety education for secondary school pupils. We did a lot in the primary schools. But now the realization is that people start to learn to drive in the UK when they're 17. That's too late to teach them about road safety. All they want to do then is learn how to drive the car. So it's very important in those years leading up to that they are educated in risk, responsibility, why crashes happen. And there's now a very good interactive program at the schools which encourages young people to think about those risks and to go through the circumstances of an accident. This one shows the scenario that is set for discussion. An accident has occurred. Why has it happened? And the group of young people will be encouraged to discuss why it happened, how it could have been avoided, and then to go on to think about the implications of that crash for the other people in the car, for their families, etc. This is all for risk awareness and to encourage responsibility amongst young people once they start to learn to drive. There was a report done by the ECMT or ECD group on improving the safety of young drivers, which came up with some very important recommendations. Reinforcing what I have just said about focusing on safe behaviour and responsibility from a young age, better training of instructors, longer learning periods, making sure that people practice a lot before they take their test. More rigorous and corruption-free testing. A hazard perception test is a very important part of that. And post-test restrictions and graduated licensing so that people don't just have carte blanche to do whatever they like as soon as they get their license when they are truly inexperienced. Black boxes in cars, monitoring their behaviour can be a very effective way of helping young drivers to keep safe, and of course publicity campaigns. This is one of the campaigns in the UK, focusing on, keep my girlfriend safe. I love my girlfriend, therefore I don't want to do anything that will hurt her. And to focus on the road safety side of that, and I think that is quite a nice way to address it. So, just now, just to summarise, we know that road crashes are a global problem and that the young are particularly affected. Campaigns and education programmes need to target risks and specifically be designed for young people in a way that they find attractive, so that it is not just boring lectures, boring posters. It is also encouraging them to interact, to think, to produce solutions to themselves in a discussion. And that in Great Britain in particular, we have produced very good interactive education programs to schools, and the publicity campaigns are focused very much on distraction, because for those teenagers, very often they think they're immortal, they think they're invincible, they think road safety is for little children, and they don't realise that they are actually at far more risk than the little children who they think are the ones who need the education. It's the teenagers, very often, who do need the education, because they've given up worrying about road safety. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for that general overview. And I just would like to highlight and stress the message that road accidents is the killer number one of young people aged 15 to 29. So just think about it. It can all affect you. Unless you think about it, it can be not very important. But from Kate's presentation, you can see some very good examples of campaigns from the UK. So if you're interested, just Google them and maybe try to do the same. We encourage you to take part and to also raise awareness about this problem. So we'll move on to our next speaker, Emma McLennan. As it was mentioned before, Emma is the director of organization EAST, a regional international road safety organization. Yep. And she will tell you a bit more about regional partnerships. That's what we do at EAST. Emma, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Did most people at the back? No. Yes, as Dimitri said, EAST, we're the Eastern Alliance for Safe and Sustainable Transport. And we're like the IBSU, we're international. These are the countries represented by our EAST partners. Is anyone here from Armenia? Any Armenians here? Okay, there's somebody. Good. Azerbaijanis? Great, great. Kyrgyzstan, how about that? Anyone from Kyrgyzstan? Hey! Great, I'm glad to see you. We've got partners working in your countries. And in a minute you'll see why. Our partners, quite often, our partner organizations, for example in Azerbaijan, were youth organizations. And they were set up because in these youth groups, there were a lot of deaths. And they decided to campaign on road safety. I understand here that you've got a road safety club, so this is something that you can begin working on too, and I'll show you why. Like I said, don't look at me. EAST was the idea of much younger people than me, and from the region locally, where we are a UK charity. But the idea came from Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Moldova, among our founding partners. You can see they were there. And it's because, one of the reasons, is because globally, road death is the leading cause of death for people in your age. So, including all of you who are talking at the moment, not listening, you're very much at risk. And this is how you figure globally. This chart is from 2013 data collected by the World Health Organization. And if you look at it, I'll point to the UK, which is the country that I live in. Georgia. Georgia is the country, the bar in red. And as you can see, the death rate in Georgia is more than 3 times higher than the country where I live. And one of the reasons is not because in the United Kingdom we're really law-abiding, safety-conscious people. It's because we've been working at this for decades. Kate McMahon, as an advisor to the Department of Transport, managed to reduce road deaths from 6,000 a year. We were killing 6,000 people a year to just about 1,000 people a year. And that was Kate's work. So this is something, one of you could be the Kate McMahon of Georgia. You could be changing the picture of Georgia dramatically. And by the way, most of the countries on the left-hand side are where we work. These are our partner countries. And just for you, anyone here an economist? This is a little bit for business studies. The world is changing, and Georgia is going to change with it. And one of the aspects is increasing car use. And I've been coming to Georgia for over 10 years, and I see a lot more cars on the road than I did when I first started. I've seen big changes in that time. Well, it's not the UK and the United States where you're going to see a growth in car use. It's in other countries. And that's going to lead to a lot more road deaths. You think it's bad now, wait 10 years. Eastern Europe is one of the high-growth regions for cars. So, Kate mentioned there's a UN Decade of Action on Road Safety. And the first pillar, there are 5 pillars, the first pillar of the Decade of Action, which Georgia have signed up to, is to build capacity, to make people and governments better able to cope. And that means tackling corruption. Georgia's been doing that. Having better coordination in government, training, having better data, but also civil society. Civil society, that's you. Having a better response from the public to road safety. Pillar 2 is safer roads, improving what the roads look like. There are a lot of roads in Georgia that look like that one on the right, aren't there? But you can see right away that if you are distracted or something happens to your car or whatever, if you run off that road, you're much more likely to die than on the road on the left where there's a barrier. And you're able, at night, you can see where you are on the left-hand road because of the lines. The right-hand road, not much chance. So that's one of the reasons people die. That's why economic growth, if there's good planning, should improve things in Georgia. Safer vehicles. A lot of countries that we work with are importing the cars that Europeans got rid of 10 years ago. So the vehicles, every year, new cars are safer. The vehicle fleet in many of the countries where we work is really bad. But also, some of the manufacturers are not behaving very well. They're deliberately manufacturing unsafe cars. If you look at this, I would rather be in the car on the right than either of the two on the left. These are new cars. The one at the bottom is a 0-star rating. That will kill you, that car, if you're in a crash. If you're the one on the right, you're more likely to walk away. So these things matter. And then, here's another image of safer vehicles. We get things like this. I think this is Moldova, one of the countries where we work. In Georgia, you see this too. You see vehicles like this. You combine those with fast cars and trucks. It's a nasty picture. Oh, that's Georgia, that picture on the right. Safer road users. You know, if you behave like an idiot, your chances of survival are much less. And how many of you would drink a coffee while driving? How many of you drivers would put your hand if you drive? Not many. Okay, like in the UK, fewer young people are driving these days. How many of you would drink a coffee while? Okay, remember, don't do that. Or talk on the phone, text. Big problem in the UK. We're trying to tackle this. Or children. You see a lot of children loose in cars. Children are like a cannonball. If you have a crash, they'll go straight through the front window. So I will talk about all of these things. I'm sure we can share the presentations. Are very important for saving your lives in a car. But I'd just like to mention seatbelts. Seatbelts reduce death among front seat passengers by 40 to 65%, depending on the study and circumstances, and for rear passengers by 20 to 75%. Now, I haven't been in a taxi in Georgia where there are rear seat belts. You don't see them very often. But in the front seat too, I see people not wearing seat belts. How many of you wear a seat belt always? I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see it. It's one of the best things you can do to protect yourself, because people think, if I'm in a crash, I can go like this and brace myself. If you're in a crash at 60 kilometers an hour, it's like jumping from the 4th floor of a building. Now, I wouldn't want to jump out the window here. I don't think I can brace myself on impact. It's the same thing, but worse. And then finally, post-crash response. The picture on the right, we took in Moldova, Moldova fire service in Chisinau. I would like to have that fire engine. I think it's an antique collector's vehicle. And then this is a program that we're running with my colleague Julie. Put up your hand, Julie. Which is helping emergency response capacity in countries like Belarus. So that's the end of my little presentation. We're working throughout the region with farmers, you can see on the right, improving visibility, with children, improving training. And we'd very much like to continue working with you. And I think you'll hear more about our efforts in Georgia. So please help us.
This regional overview, and I guess I hope many of you saw some examples and very good figures. When you often look at the lectures online on YouTube or TED Talks, you might see some good ideas and you think, oh wow, yeah, this is something interesting. So I can then maybe take training or just Google more about it. So please do. And our last speaker is Gelat Vashilava. I guess some of you might know him already. He is our East partner, and he is the mayor of local road safety organization, and he will tell you more about his initiatives and campaigns. Please, Gelat.
ჩემთვის დიდი პატივია გამოსვლა პირველი შემიძლია შავიზღვისის საერთაშორისო უნივერსიტეტის ხელმძღვანელობა თვითონ პროექტის პატივიას უთხრა მადლობა რომ ჩვენს ორგანიზაციას ზოგადად ის მისცა საშუალება რომ ესეთი ღონისძიება ჩაიტარებინა. დაუნიშნე რომ უბრალოდ როცა მოვედი ამ უნივერსიტეტში უბრალოდ მოვედი და გაცნობა ჩვენი ორგანიზაცია ფონდი პარტნიორობა საკუთარი უსაფრთხოებისთვის მუშაობს მთლიანად საქართველოს მასშტაბით უნივერსიტეტებთან, სკოლებთან, ადგილობრივ ხელისუფლებასთან ჩვენი ხალხი ფონდა საკუთარი უსაფრთხოების პროექტი ჩართული იყო მთლიანად ბიზნესი და როცა მოვედი უნივერსიტეტში პირველი წუთიდანვე ვნახე რომ ბატონმა ილიასმა ხელმა კოლექტივმა როგორ ჩაერთო, გაიგო ეს თემა რამდენად მნიშვნელოვანია ჩვენი საზოგადოებისთვის. სანამ ჩემს მოხსენებას დავიწყებ, მინდა ერთი შეკითხვა გქონდეთ, უბრალოდ რამდენიმე თქვენი აზრით რამდენი ადამიანი იღებს საქართველოში ტრავმას ყოველწლიურად? 50. ციფრები მითხარი. 50. 50 რა?
50 მარტო. 50.
მინდა გითხრათ, რომ ყოველწლიურად საქართველოში სამსაუბრ ტრამატიზმიდან 9000 ადამიანი იღებს ტრამვას. 9000. საქართველოში ზოგადად მთლიანად იღებს 40000. ესე იგი, სამსაუბრ ტრამატიზმი არის ერთ-ერთი ყველაზე მთავარი პრობლემა. მე არ ვიცი საქართველოში ოჯახი, არ ვიცი ადამიანი, ვისაც ახლობელი არ მოყოლია ავარიაში. ალბათ და საშუალოდ 3 წლის განმავლობაში 30000-მდე ადამიანი დაშავდა. აქ საუბარია მძიმე ტრამვებზე. სიკვდილიანობა ყოველწლიურად სადღაც ოფიციალური სტატისტიკით 600 ადამიანზე მეტია და ოფიციალური სტატისტიკა არსებობს, რომ 17-დან 40 წლამდე ადამიანების ესე იგი 50% გარდაცვლილების არის 17-დან 40 წლამდე ადამიანები. ამაზე ყველაფერზე უნდა დავფიქრდეთ, და ჩვენი მოსვლის მიზანი ჩვენ დღეს ვსაუბრობთ რა არის საგზაო უსაფრთხოება, რატომ არის მნიშვნელოვანი. ესეთ ხშირად გაგვიგია ესეთი შტისა, რომ წყოლმა იფრინა და ადგილზე სწრაფად ჩავედით სიტყვაზე თბილისიდან ბათუმში, ხო, ხშირად გაგვიგია. მაგრამ სამწუხაროდ ზოგჯერ ეს ტრენერი ძალიან ცუდად მთავრდება. მე მithქონდა პრეზენტაციები უამრავი მაქვს, მაგრამ მინდა ერთი ფაქტი, ტრაგედია გაგახსენოთ, რომელიც მოხდა 7 ივლისს ღამით. თიანეთის გზატკეცილზე მოხდა, არ ვიცი თუ გაგიგიათ, ახალგაზრდების ჯგუფი, 4 ახალგაზრდა, 20-დან 29 წლამდე წავიდა მამკოდის დღეში, რომ აღენიშნეს თავისი დაბადების დღე. უკან როცა ბრუნდებოდნენ, ეს მოხდა 7 ივლისს, კოკა, ირაკლი, შოთა და ზუკა, კოკას დაბადების დღე იყო. ერთ-ერთ მოსახლეობთან იქ ბუნებრივია დღეში რომ წავიდნენ დალიეს, ერთ-ერთ მოსახლეობთან ეს მანქანა გადავარდა და ეს 4 ახალგაზრდა დაიღუპა. ესენი იყვნენ ერთი კორპუსიდან, ერთი მეგობრები, ერთ ოჯახი ყავდა, მეორე ხალხი და მესამე მუშაობდა, ყველა წარმატებული ადამიანი იყო 21-დან 29 წლამდე. თქვენ წარმოვიდგინეთ, რომ ეს 4 ადამიანი, ამ 4 ადამიანის სიცოცხლე იმ წამს დამთავრდა, რამდენი ოჯახის ტრაგედია იყო. იმა შეყვარებული დარჩა, იმ შვილი დაკარგა. რა ვიცი, ეს ადამიანები სამუდამოდ წავიდნენ მათი ოჯახებიდან. და რა მოხდა? ხომ საინტერესოა, ხო? სამწუხაროდ ესეთი ფაქტები საქართველოში ძალიან ბევრი ხდება. ეს ჩვენ შეიძლება ზოგჯერ თავს ვუჭავთ, თითქოს ვფიქრობთ ეს ჩვენ არ გვეხება, მაგრამ ყველას გვეხება საგზაო უსაფრთხოება. ამიტომაც ვარ ჩვენ აქ, იმიტომაც ვიქნებით ხვალ, იმიტომაც მოვიყვანთ გადაწყვეტილების მიღებებს აქ და მოვუთხოვთ, რომ ამ კუთხით კონკრეტული ნაბიჯები უნდა გადაიდგას. იმიტომ, რომ საქართველოში ეს არის უკვე საზოგადოებრივი ჯანდაცვის პრობლემა. ეს არ არის გელას პრობლემა, ეს არ არის ცალკე პიროვნების აღება, ეს ყველას პრობლემაა. ყველა ჩვენთანგაც გვეხება და ზუსტად უნივერსიტეტს იმიტომ ვეუბნებით მადლობას, რომ ფონდს ჩვენ ყველას გვეხმარება, რომ ეს გაგება, მიდგომა, რომ ყველა შეგვიძლია ერთად ხოლო გადავწყვიტოთ ეს საკითხი, აი ესეთი მიდგომით შეიძლება ამის ახსნა. ჩვენი ალბათ რამდენი ემა მიკითხა, რამდენი პროცენტი ატარებთ, თქვენ ხო ატარებთ, ხო? ჩვენი ორგანიზაცია და ზოგადად ჩვენი საქმიანობითაა ცნობილი, რომ საქართველოში ყვეთის კანონი რო შემოვიდა. იცოდით ალბათ გახსოვთ, რომ ყვეთს ქართული კაცი არ ატარებს, იმიტომ რომ ტრადიციებიო რაღაცა იგონებდა რაღაც საქართველოს დაავადებას აჩენსო. რაღაც დაავადება გააჩინა ყვეთმა? ვინმეს გაუჩნდა დაავადება? პირიქით, ეს უკვე სამინისტრო ყველა მაგიარა, რომ რამდენი ათასი სიცოცხლე გადაარჩინა, რამდენი ათასი. არ დაიჯეროთ ეს მითები, რომ საქართველოში არ შეიძლება ველობილიგების გაკეთება. ესაა მითი. საქართველოზე უარეს ქვეყნებში არსებობდა უფრო რელიეფურად ცუდ ქვეყნებში. არ დაიჯეროთ, რომ საქართველოში არ შეიძლება საზოგადოებრივი ტრანსპორტი უკეთესი იყოს. არ დაიჯეროთ, რომ საქართველოში არ შეიძლება რომ შემცირდეს ავარიები. ყველაფერი შემცირდება, თუ იქნება ზუსტად ესეთი აქტივობები, თუ იქნება მთავრობის აქტიურობა, თუ იქნება ბიზნესის აქტიურობა. და საგზაო უსაფრთხოება მოხდება ჩვენგან, ყოველი ჩვენგან. ჩვენ იმის გამო რომ სხვა არ იცავს, ჩვენ არა, ჩვენ უნდა დავიცვათ. და ჩემი მესეჯი ეს არის, რომ ის 7 ივლისის ფაქტი რო არ განმეორდეს, ყველამ ერთად უნდა ვიმუშაოთ ჩვენ, რომ წესები დავიცვათ, სხვასაც მოვუწოდოთ. ჩვენ მაგობელი ვართ, რომ უნივერსიტეტში შეიქმნა კლუბი და ვაკიდებ ძალიან კარგი კამპანიის დამოწებას და იმედი მაქვს, რომ მთელი უნივერსიტეტი შეუერთდება და ამის ძალიან საინტერესო ეხება ზებრას. სამარცხვინოა უბრალოდ, მე მწვენია, რომ საქართველოში მწვანეები არ უთმობენ ზებრაზე ქვეითებს. ეს უნდა ყველა ჩვენმა მეზობელმა, ჩვენზე ნაკლებად განვითარებულმა ქვეყნებმა შეძლეს და საქართველოში რატომ არ შეიძლება? შეიძლება და აი ამ კამპანიაში ამჩიეს ზებრა, ან გავაწევთ ზებრა, იმედია მთელი უნივერსიტეტი შეუერთდება. დიდი მადლობა.
Saying, but I hope and I'm sure it was something really inspiring, which inspires Morgi to get engaged. Just a little announcement because it was mentioned when Rector was speaking about me about educational programs. So if any of you after this event interested in the topic of road safety, we'll be working with your university. We'll be talking to the university. We are working on a course, on training course for road safety. Our organization and UK's university, Cranfield University. So we'll be talking to your rector and to Zviad as well, and maybe in future we will offer an opportunity for you to get a certificate on road safety. So So if you're interested in taking this topic a bit further, if you're keen on maybe learning new and in-depth rather than just a lecture within 1 hour, please be aware and get in touch with Zviad or us. So maybe, yeah, I know you have asked one. I guess if any questions,
Maybe one or two questions.
we'll take maybe 1 or 2. Just raise your hand if. Then, well.
So they brought students, high school students, to an audience station, and they showed them the proud authors of those people who died in the flash. You know, it was a horrible work, but it had a positive effect, because the students were horrified, those nice.
It's certainly one of the methods that have used. I think one of the problems with that sort of shock treatment is very often it doesn't last. But you can use it as part of a comprehensive program, certainly. What we found in the UK with drink driving, it's a long time of putting out publicity, focusing on several elements. One, in terms of the risk and the impact on victims, but also the impact on drivers in terms of losing their license and insurance going up, so that you can bring in all the aspects. And certainly now in the UK, we've got to a position where drinking and driving is frowned upon socially. Some people still do it, but most people don't. It used to be the case, certainly when I was first driving, people would say one for the road. Nobody would say that now in the UK, and our numbers of deaths have plummeted. But there are still people who don't drive, and they're the really difficult ones. And enforcement is very, very important. If people think they are going to the court and brutalised, they are more likely to obey the law. And that, I think, is actually the foundation stone of drink driving policy, to make sure that the risk of being caught when you do drink is very high. So you can do a certain amount by publicity and shock tactics, but you do need the foundation of other things as well.
Just a quick comment to say, I agree with Kate, shock tactics have to be, they don't always work, and they have to be accompanied by other positive messages, or people block it out. The US record on road safety is not a good one. It's sort of in the middle of all the countries. It's better to look, I think, in Sweden, the Netherlands, and other countries where they've been doing a lot of research on public attitudes. And there, as Kate says, it's a combination of different factors, particularly something positive. Get people to think, I can do something about this, and then they will.
So, panel, thank you all for coming, and yeah, please join the traffic club and yeah, make a difference. Thank you.